Experts say the best time to get pregnant is between your late 20s and early 30s. But the reality is that for the modern woman, the late 20s and the early 30s are likely to be spent chasing career, academic or personal goals, and the future can be uncertain. For the Kenyan woman at that age, there are likely to be aunties reminding them that they're not getting younger and they need to have babies when they're still young. Thanks to advances in technology, women can now freeze their eggs and use them much later when they're ready to have children.
Egg freezing, in medical terms we call it oocyte vitrification, is a process by which we get the eggs from the woman and then we freeze this egg for future use.
The technology known as embryo freezing has in the last decade gained traction among a growing number of middle-class women in their 20s. Although egg freezing is still rare in Kenya, there is a growing interest in the procedure. So what are some of the indications that could require one to get their eggs frozen?
The indications by which a woman might need to do her eggs to be frozen, maybe it's a young girl, above maybe 18 years or 20 years, who is going to have treatment exposed to chemotherapeutic agents or agents that can cause toxicity to the gonads or to the ovary. Or she's going to have what we call pelvic radiation. Radiotherapy, she has cancer or some disease that requires radiation therapy at the pelvic region or the abdominal region. Or she's on this medication, or she has some high risk factors like genetic mutations or chromosomal mutations that will put her at risk of what we call premature ovarian failure or premature ovarian insufficiency. This means that later on in life, the ovaries might not be able to work because they're insufficient.
Experts say it is critical for women to receive enough education because it's a decision that requires careful consideration and realistic expectations.
One thing to note is that women eggs are finite in number, so they not like sperms. Sperms are produced like on a daily basis, but the female eggs, one is born with them, they keep on reducing in number, and by the time they get to adulthood, most of the follicles or most of the eggs have undergone atresia. So what happens for the women who are at risk of these particular procedures or losing their fertility or premature ovarian insufficiency will be exposed to stimulation, and we stimulate them with some hormones, and for about 10 days, then we trigger the process of ovulation, and then we are able to harvest. So we harvest the eggs, and then the eggs are, we remove the water from them and rapidly frozen in liquid nitrogen at negative 196 degrees Celsius, and they can stay for life. So basically these are the main processes by which we do and the indications by which we do the egg freezing. Now there's a bit of trend towards what we call elective oocyte vitrification or elective egg freezing, where a woman chooses, because I'm busy, I'm going to school, or I do not have a husband, I don't want to have fertility now, they choose to have their eggs frozen. Very few studies have been done on the process of elective egg freezing, but it's actually a trend that's coming up that many women are electing to freeze their eggs for future fertility.
Egg freezing and subsequent procedures come at a steep cost, so those who consider them valid and smart options need to be prepared.
On average, in most of the facility centers will be about 300 to 350,000. And the eggs will be stored for as long as the patient wants them to be stored. The eggs will not grow to become embryos on their own. So what happens is that we do the process of IVF, or what we call intracytoplasmic sperm injection. It's called ICSI. So in this case, once the oocytes have been stored, they'll be thawed. Thawing means they'll be removed from that negative temperature to the normal temperature. And then at this temperature, actually incubation temperature, then they'll be mixed with sperms, so the eggs are just mixed, or they'll be injected with sperms to form embryos. So this is called IVF, or intracytoplasmic sperm injection. And eventually you get the embryos that are formed. The embryos will be stored there for about 6 days to form what we call blastocysts. and the blastocysts are the ones that will be transferred into the woman's uterus for a baby to be born.
Even as they consider this as an option, women are advised to consider the risks before moving forward because of the risk to their health and, of course, the effect on their finances. The risk range from ovarian hyperstimulation to injury on the blood vessels.
Just like any medical intervention, in this case, you are exposed to treatment and you get hormonal treatment for quite a number of days. Some cases, one might have what we call hyperstimulation syndrome. So we stimulate the ovaries to be able to recruit enough number of follicles. So in rare circumstances, you might get the ovaries being hyperstimulated, and the woman suffers from what we call ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, which are basically many components, including abdominal swelling, respiratory complications, and this might need hospitalization and sometimes intensive care. So this is a rare complication, but it could happen. It's called ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. Another one is during the harvesting process. If not properly done, there could be injury to the blood vessels around the ovary, and this might require surgical procedure or surgical intervention so the patient goes to theater for laparoscopy to clip the vessels that are bleeding. So these are some of the rare complications that can happen, but the people need to know that they're exposed to these risks.
While egg freezing is legally acceptable, it's important that the eggs are harvested at the prime of the reproductive age. They add that those freezing their eggs electively, meaning for social reasons such as delaying childbearing due to career considerations or because they have not yet met a partner, should be given an idea of what their chances of success are when they thaw the eggs.
You have a choice to make at 40, for example. You want to say you've now got a partner and you think this is a partner you want to have babies with. It's a choice. A woman might want to have babies with more than one person, but maybe it's this person you've identified. So you thaw everything. Once you thaw, you fertilize all the eggs. So you do either IVF or ICSI. Then you can now store the embryos, what we call embryo vitrification. Now with the embryo vitrification, you select maybe 2 or 3. In this country, we normally transfer 3 embryos. So we get the 3 embryos, you transfer, the rest are stored. It might pick, it might not pick. So when it picks, maybe 1 or 2 survive, sometimes none survives. Yeah, then you try a cycle again. You get the other embryos that have been frozen, you transfer. If they survive 3, we take care of you. If survive 2, we take care of you. 1, we take care. None, we also do take care of you. Then there's also a choice to say 20 eggs, I want to thaw only 5, fertilize and see. So you have a choice as a patient to make. This is a really procedure that people really need to know about it, though we're still doing more work on elective, that's the so-called elective oocyte freezing. But I know it's just because of the ethical issues. And so ethical issues, safety, costs, And then we also don't know the emotional aspect of it, that if you give an egg at 23 years, you get this egg fertilized and you get a baby at 40 years. We don't know the so-called emotional aspects of this, and these are things that are being currently studied.
Putting your eggs on ice could keep your future family planning options open. For majority of women, egg freezing is considered a fail-safe process, but it also could be emotionally, physically, and literally costly. So, consult with your doctor and consider all your options before making the call.